What do you remember about a young Dale Jr., in your
Oh gosh.
family?
Um, so I remember the tape story, and I actually did it twice because he did it so easy in my office that time. I can't believe the guy actually pulled that apart.
There's money
Uh,
involved.
yeah. So somewhere at some track, um, when he would come, and this was Wrangler days, his dad, and I was the sponsor then, so I didn't really work for Dale Sr. at that time, but I worked with him, obviously. But if you were around him, you worked for him. You didn't. That's just how it was. But he'd go to practice or whatever, and he'd say, "Keep an eye on Junior." It's like, yeah, right, of course. Uh, and it was easy to keep an eye on him because he'd always be around Jimmy Means's garage or pit is where you'd find him.
Yeah.
But I remember him. He was kind of pestering me or pestering us or something at some place. And so I took duct tape this time and put it together and said, all right, let's see you pull that apart. And I think I told him, if you can do that, I'll give you $100.
It was $100.
Yeah. And he did it. And I didn't pay him at the time. I think I actually finally paid you at Richard Childress's Hall and NASCAR induction.
Yeah.
A couple years
Gosh,
ago.
that was just a few years ago.
Yeah.
Any interest?
No interest, but I did finally.
Jeez. Boy,
Dale,
he sat on that one for a long time.
Yeah. Dale, I mean, I don't want to embarrass him, but he wanted to be around his dad.
Yeah.
What kid didn't, And Dale Sr., he was busy racing, but I think there was a part of him just didn't really know how to open up like that. He just didn't. I don't think it happened to him. And so, that's kind of what he knew. And I remember when you got sent to the military school, not far from Greensboro.
Yeah.
Because I'd see your dad once in a while when he'd come over there. And I remember how that bothered him. And he said, I don't know what else to do. And he was, but he was trying to race and he was trying to be a dad. And it was some tough times. But I remember being around Dale, and his eyes were always wide open, soaking it in. He was taking it all in, and he wasn't a bad kid at all. He was actually a pretty good kid. He wanted to be one of the boys. He wanted to be around all of that. He wanted to be around the race crews, and I think most of the guys, Will and Danny and those guys and Chocolate. I mean, obviously we all looked out for him and loved him to death.
David, you just introduced an element to this military school story that we have never heard, and trust me, we've unpacked this story a lot. But was Dale Earnhardt conflicted a little bit about sending him to military school?
Oh, I think so. I mean, I think he was, and look, I'm a parent, and my boys are grown now, but I can relate to, you get to a point with a kid like, what am I going to do here? And I think, I don't know all the details. I just know that Dale was acting out some, and Big Dale was like, I don't know what to do with, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm trying to race. And, racing was really starting to come around for him, because this was mid 80s, if I remember, or maybe early 80s. I don't remember, something like that. I was in Greensboro, so it had to have been, but I know it was frustrating him a little bit. Big Dale. And he didn't know what to do, but he was like, well, I think this is the best for him. And I remember having that conversation about it. And of course, Kelly, I think, went too at that time, didn't she?
She did. Yeah. She went about 2 weeks. It seemed really short, like after I'd been going. Yeah. Me and Teresa weren't getting along at all. I was probably 12 or 13 years old, and me and Teresa had some pretty bad arguments that I think Dad was at the end of his rope on what I needed to mature. And as bad and as scary as going to military school sounded, and as tough as it was the first several weeks, to get adjusted to being away from home and around a bunch of strangers. It ended up being it ended up fixing the problem. So yeah, to be honest with you, it fixed the problem. So I was just talking to Amy about that the other day. I was like, man, when I was in military school, I handled my own mail. You know, I mailed my own mail. I received it. I scheduled my own haircuts. I handled my dry cleaning. You know, I cleaned my room had to be a particular way. You had to have two fingers between the toothbrush, the toothpaste, the comb, everything. Everything had to be perfect. You had to have 2 fingers in between every hanger in the closet. Everything had to be facing the same way in the closet. Just the details, right, of what you had to be responsible for.
Yeah.
It really helped me a lot. So,
what was you? Oh, go ahead,
sure.
David.
No, I'm just going to say, I'm sure it did. I know all of us kind of felt for both you kids at that time because
Kelly came because she missed me. She seemed to be all about it. Like she thought she couldn't wait to get out of the house. Right. I never thought they was going to send me away.
Kelly, she probably ended up running part of the military.
She did. Yeah. You damn right.
But David, with all that said, when Dale Jr., if you guys had the AC Delco as a client, and so you must have been then very much part of when Dale Jr. got that ride in the Bush series in 97, 98. What do you remember? That vantage point has always fascinated me, or that story has always fascinated me because Dale Jr. didn't get the courtesy of a heads up that he was about to get in that ride. In fact, I think he pretty much thought he was unemployed and probably a lifelong service station, manager of some sort. But then he gets that ride. But you probably have an interesting vantage point from that as well.
Well, so as I remember, we didn't get much of a heads up either. It was like Dale Sr. just kind of came out of left field at us. If I remember right, this was like fall of the year, maybe September, October-ish. I remember not having a lot of time to like think this out one night, and Dale Sr. came and said, I think we ought to put Dale Jr. in the car. You'd been running down at the beach or somewhere, and we're like, great, so we had to go to GM and we went to them. They were, there wasn't much debate about it or anybody that I remember, because was Schrader running AC Delco races then for us? I can't remember.
We had Steve Park in the car in 97.
Yep.
Okay.
And he was moving to the new Cup car, the new Pennzoil car.
Yeah. Okay.
Schrader had been running AC Delco, I believe, at that exact time in ASA.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
All pro
maybe
and stuff.
truck too. Maybe he ran some truck with AC Delco. But
I think you're right.
Yeah, I remember Big Dale coming and saying, let's put Junior in that car. And none of it took all of us by surprise, but, we're all like, man, that could be fun. I mean, marketing, you got senior, junior, let's see what that's like. And so my company got the first assignment of, babysitting Junior in, and I put Teresa Underdown on him because she came out of rodeo and I knew her well, and she was used to handling cowboys. And
this was your first PR girl, right? She was doing PR and she worked for you at Champion, and
Correct.
She was assigned to Dale.
Correct.
Okay.
Well, and Senior was like, yeah, I like that. Put her with Junior. I mean, he's like, she won't take any crap off of him, and she won't, and she didn't, and and they were fine together, but she was all about, you're gonna follow me, son, and as I remember, and yeah.
So
but
obviously
it was fun. It was fun.
You saw the marketing potential, but did you have any idea of what he brought to the table as far as driving talent?
Oh, I'd never seen him turn a lap myself. I mean, he'd been racing down at the beach or wherever else, maybe Hickory a little or something. I don't remember.
Yeah, he'd run a few bush races.
And you know, if Senior wanted you in the car, I mean, that was, you know, that's kind of where Hornaday came from, and you know, Steve Park and all of that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
He had a pretty good track record.
Yes, he did.
The people had to trust if this is what he wanted to do.
Yep.
Oh man, I can imagine.
Teresa,
go ahead.
Teresa Underdown was amazing, and I probably made things a lot harder than I should have at times because I didn't really have it figured out. But she was perfect, you know. And I think that when I think back over my career, the certain people that came into my career at certain times, the insight that, you know, Dad and you and other people had to put Teresa in that position, and Teresa's, you know, personality and her professionalism to steer me the way she did really was a big help. It could have went so many different ways.
Yeah.
It really could have. And putting her in that position was great. So I think about that.
Yeah, Teresa was kind of a no-nonsense. I mean, like I said, she'd come out of rodeo and she'd been around cowboys for a lot.
Yeah.
Well, she grew up in Arizona and she grew up around it, and she just wasn't afraid. And your dad, I'm pretty sure, just gave her permission to, like, do what you got to do.
Yep.
To keep him out of trouble and get him where he's supposed to be. And, you know, he didn't like to get up in the mornings and blah, blah, blah.
No,
Yeah,
I don't believe that.
I know it's hard to believe, but Dale was carrying the sport. And that's not a put down to anybody else. There was great, you know, Rusty was a big part of it, and a lot of others, Mark and so on. But Dale was carrying that sport for a long time. And I mean, I heard you talk on a couple of other of your shows about how he was kind of the enforcer or the sheriff in the garage area. He was. I mean, between him and Bill Jr., that's where big things happened or didn't happen, or, you know, it was going to do this or going to do that. But he was the sport on the track too. I mean, he was the persona. And from February 18 of that year, and I've run into hundreds and hundreds of people over my time since leaving that have said, I don't think I've watched a race since, or I that's about when I quit watching. It just, you know, it just lost something. And there isn't another guy like that right now. And the sport really misses that, I think.
Yeah.
The sport misses the sport misses it, but there's also, you know, things to look back on, and the stories that you're telling here are incredible.
I remember if I could just say, I remember Barney Hall telling me one time, and this was in Wrangler days, so it would have been in the 90s. And he kind of he said, you'll be able to say someday, we saw the best of this deal. Mm. And I mean, it was pretty prophetic looking back now. I think we did. I mean, it was incredible, because we went from doing autograph sessions with Dale over at that Volusia Mall at a J.C. Penney's when he was signing for store clerks, and that was it, and to where there would be, you know, lines clear around a dealership for 2-3 hours wanting to get into. It changed that much that fast. And I was just so stinking lucky to be there at the right time. And man, I can't tell you how blessed that I was for that. And it was an incredible time. It really was.
Is it easy to talk about Dale Earnhart, or is it do you not do it too much?
It is now. It is now. So when that all happened, my job from that afternoon on for a while was to go back to Charlotte and start handling stuff. And so it was media calling and all of that. And then it wasn't long after that, I told my wife, because my boys were really little. They were both born in Concord. And I was like, man, well, let me back up. I remember flying home from an appearance with Dale somewhere. And this will tell you, I remember he either talked on the way home or he slept all the way. It depended. But this one night he was talking, and my second son had just been born. So it must have been 98 or so. And he was like, David, you spend time with those kids. He said, I didn't do it. It's the biggest regret of my life. He said, I didn't do it right when my kids were little, and I wish I had. And I'm sure he never told you guys that, but he felt it, and that stuck in my head. And when Dale died, it just hit me like a ton of bricks. I got to take these kids home and be around their grandparents. And because I'm from out here, and I lived clear out there. My folks were here, my wife's folks were here, all their cousins, everybody. So we moved home, and it was because of what he said, that he's like, you'll never get it back. And he regretted it, and that stuck with me. And but talking about him now, yeah, it's certainly time heals a lot of stuff, but it was hard for a while. It was, yeah.